Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fanatic Breakdown Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Higgins, with all the latest NFL and NBA news. Today, I will be reviewing Week 2 of the NFL season. I know I'm releasing the episode late, but better late than never, huh? Alright, the first NFL game I'll be reviewing today, Chargers vs. Chiefs, the first game exclusively on Amazon Prime that debuted Thursday. As it would seem, the Chiefs beat the Chargers 27-24, and I say as it seems, I don't know what the frick I'm talking about. They did win 27-24. And Justin Herbert actually looked quite solid up until late in the game when he threw a 99-yard interception. But just a few plays later, he ended up breaking his rib cartilage. He's questionable for next game. I wouldn't bet on him playing, but it's very possible he could. Austin Eckler did not look good for the Chargers. 14 carries, 39 yards. That's just 2.8 yards a carry. And he ended up splitting carries with Joshua Kelly and Sony Michel as well, who both got 4 carries each. Mike Williams was remarkable for the Chargers. 8 catches, 113 yards, and 1 touchdown in Keenan Allen's absence. Gerald Everett ended up stepping up at tight end with 71 yards. Very good. Austin Eckler was good through the air. Obviously not rushing, as I said before. But very good through the air with 9 catches, 55 yards. Josh Palmer showed flashes of greatness, honestly. They all played very well. The only Charger to record a sack was Khalil Mack with 1 sack. Kind of underwhelming with other guys like Joey Bosa and Derwin James. But, nonetheless, quite impressive. If you can hang on with the Chiefs to make it a very, very close game, I'd say you're doing something right. But for the Chiefs, Mahomes was not nearly as great as I originally thought he played, looking at the score. Just 235 yards, 2 touchdowns. No interceptions, though. Still without an interception this season. Throwing 7 touchdowns in all through his first 2 games. Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked amazing. 8 carries, 74 yards. That's over 9 yards a rush. That's very impressive. Isaiah Pacheco only actually got 2 carries. He was very good in Week 1, but I don't know what happened in Week 2. Travis Kelce was the leading receiver. That doesn't really mean much right now because he only had 5 catches, 51 yards. Nothing great. Although for a tight end, that's pretty solid, but he's the best tight end in the league, so I think you probably expect more from him. I am very, very disappointed in Juju right now, Juju Smith-Schuster, because I started him in my fantasy league, and he had 4 fantasy points. I also started in the same league DJ Chark, who ended with 0 fantasy points. So, I'm not very happy right now. As you would imagine, I lost in that league, but it is what it is, right? Valdez-Scantling was all right. 2 catches, 13 yards. Less catches than Juju, but, more yards. Mecole Hardman was actually the 3rd leading receiver with 49 yards on 3 catches. Justin Watson, to be completely honest, I had no clue who that guy was, but he caught like a 40-yard touchdown bomb from Patty Mahomes. So, impressive. Other than that, there's nothing really remarkable to say about this game. Other than the fact that the Chargers, towards the second half, started to look sloppy. But you can't really blame any of it on Herbert after his injury. But, I think it says a lot about what it's gonna come down to in the rest of the season. All right, the next game I got in the lineup, Patriots-Steelers, and the Patriots ended up beating the Steelers 17-14. Very proud of the Pats right now. Mac Jones, he played the game manager role solidly. I think they really relied on their strengths, which is their really nice running game and their always remarkable defense. Mac Jones ended up passing for 252 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Just a 1-to-1 ratio. It's okay. But Damian Harris ended up stepping up in a large way with 15 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Ramondre Stevenson even looked pretty good with 9 carries, 47 yards. And they both averaged either just under or just above 5 yards a carry. Nelson Aguilar had a really, really good game. I think probably one of his first really good games for the Pats after being here. This is his 2nd year on the Pats. He had 6 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. It's 18 yards a reception. That's very, very good. Jacoby Myers was even good with 9 catches, 95 yards. I think he's only scored on the Pats once in his career, so it doesn't surprise me he didn't get in the end zone. And then the next guy is just Kendrick Bourne, who was 2 catches, 16 yards. And Devontae Parker had 0 catches. He doesn't seem to be much of a factor. Also, both tight ends, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, had 0 catches too. So it's very clear on this Patriots offense who's the main target. Nothing crazy for the Pats defensively. They had a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They had 3 sacks. One from Matt Judon, one from Christian Barmore, and the other from Jelani Tavai. So, I mean, pretty solid game. I'll give it that, definitely. But for the Steelers, Mitch Trubisky, I think from looking at the stat sheet, he doesn't look awful. 168 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. That's not good. But if you watched the game, or watched the highlights at least, Mitch looked awful. There was just so many miscues, misfires, overthrows, underthrows, throwing to the wrong read. It didn't look good. I think we're going to see Kenny Smallhands Pickett inside of the lineup quite soon, is from what it seems. Najee Harris, underwhelming. Very underwhelming. 15 carries for 49 yards. That's just above 3 yards a carry. Nothing special for Najee, really. I think he was this massive talent last year, but he's shown significant regression this year in just his second year. Although, I'm not going to fault him yet. I don't want to overreact because, it's his second year, and we're 2 weeks into the season, and he's already dealing with injuries. So take everything that he does with a grain of salt right now. Deontay Johnson had another solid game, 6 receptions for 57 yards, but that's the leader in receptions and yards for this Steelers squad. I think that also shows a lot about Mitch Trubisky, not getting it to those guys. He has an amazing group of people. George Pickens, 1 catch. Claypool had 4, but just for 26 yards. Freiermuth was okay. Just 4 catches, 22 yards, but he did get in the end zone. Minkah Fitzpatrick ended up picking off a pass. He's looking like a contender for Defensive Player of the Year, especially with his teammate TJ Watt out. There's a little bit less competition for him there, but he's been looking very, very good. Miles Jack ended up leading them in tackles. He looked very, very good in stopping the run, even though the Steelers' defense and all got torn up on the run. But I digress. But overall, a good game. Patriots beating out the Steelers 17-14. All right, the next game I got is Panthers-Giants. A shocking outcome again for the Giants. They ended up beating the Panthers 19-16. Very, very impressive 2-0 start for New York. Baker Mayfield, as much as I don't want to say it, because I am a big Baker Mayfield guy. I like Baker Mayfield. But he did not look good. He didn't look much better than I think what Sam Darnold would look like. Man, it just pains me to see so much talent around Baker and him just not utilizing it. But just 145 yards and 1 touchdown throwing through the air for Baker. Christian McCaffrey looked very good through the run. I said last week he did not look good, but this week threw that right in my face. Said, "Oh, nah, man, I think I'm gonna be good this week." When you know what? 15 carries, 102 yards, about 7 yards a carry, very solid. DJ Moore was the leading receiver for the Panthers. Just 3 catches, 43 yards, but he did get in the end zone. Robbie Anderson also 3 catches, 32 yards. McCaffrey 4 catches, 26 yards. And that's the best we've got here. Their leading receiver had just 4 catches. Very inaccurate game for Baker, for sure. Brian Burns sacked Daniel Jones twice. Very impressive. And for Daniel Jones, going over to the Giants side of things, 176 yards, 1 touchdown. Daniel Jones being Daniel Jones, throwing 0 dimes. But you know what? They got the win. At the end of the day, they're running through Saquon, of whom had 21 carries, 72 yards. Nothing special, but 72 yards can be very big. You know what? Here, Richie James led them in receiving this week with 5 catches, 51 yards. Surprising, with other guys like, Kenny Galladay, Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard. I don't think Wandale played last week, but then the next guy is David Sills. So you know what? This Giants offense, at least they know they have options. But I think one guy I would definitely consider being traded away by the trade deadline is Kenny Galladay. Getting up there in age, hasn't caught a touchdown in like 2-3 years. Injury prone. Same thing with Sterling Shepard. I think he's 27, 28 too. So those two guys very well could be gone by the trade deadline, or at least one of them. For the defense on the Giants side, Julian Love had a sack. O'Shane Ximines had a sack. And that's it. No interceptions on the day for either of the teams. So clean games, but not good games for the quarterbacks, if that makes any sense. But Giants beat out the Panthers 19-16. Now we're going to be clowning the Browns for weeks and weeks to come. They fall to the Jets 31-30. And you know what happened? Nick Chubb accidentally scored. One of the best ways to lose a game. You accidentally get in the end zone. So basically what he should have done is he should have slid down, run out a little bit more clock, then they get in the end zone later, or just kick a field goal. Because and then they just gave a chance for the Jets to get back on the field. If you give 2012 playoff Joe Flacco the ball, he's going to score. And he looked like 2012 playoff Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was freaking amazing. 307 yards and 4 touchdowns. And you know what? 2 of those went to Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson looked remarkable. 8 catches, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. Corey Davis, just 2 catches, but 83 yards and a touchdown. Elijah Moore had 3 catches, 41 yards. Tyler Conklin had 6 catches, 40 yards. He made Michael Carter look good through the air with 5 catches, 27 yards. And rushing, I think neither running back, Michael Carter, or Breece Hall could catch their footing, just like they couldn't last week. But Breece Hall actually did look a lot better. 7 carries, 50 yards. And Michael Carter got 7 carries, 23 yards. Obviously, Breece Hall, off of those numbers, you can guess he played better, with averaging just over 7 yards a carry. But very solid game, to be completely honest. And Ashton Davis, of all people, picked off a pass for the Jets. But, solid. Jacoby Brissett played like Jacoby Brissett. I think a lot of players really played like themselves this week. Other than Joe Flacco, who played really, really good. But Brissett, 229 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Nick Chubb was amazing. But a lot of the reason he was amazing is a big reason of why they lost. So take that with what you will. But 17 carries, 87 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt had a significantly reduced role with just 13 carries, 58 yards. Not much through the air for him either, just 2 catches, 16 yards. Actually, Nick Chubb did more through the air with 3 catches, 26. Their leading receiver was Amari Cooper, 9 catches, 101 yards, 1 touchdown. Pretty good, especially with Jacoby Brissett throwing you the ball. And then the second receiver, it was actually Harrison Bryant, who's like their second or third tight end, who had 3 catches, 45 yards. And then it was David Njoku with 3 for 32. Myles Garrett was really the only... Well, Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney both had a sack, but that's really all they could muster up on defense. Other than that, they weren't really anything special. But I will say, the Jets played very well. Both New York teams have come out of the gate looking pretty solid, other than the Week 1 performance for the Jets, when they got completely clobbered by the Ravens. But they're also the Ravens. They were pretty good. And I can't wait to talk about the Ravens later, because they looked like clowns out there in the second half. But I'll get to that later. But nonetheless, Jets beating out the Browns 31-30. This next game, let's go Jaguars. 24-0 beating out the Colts. Completely surprising. I never would have guessed that they would have won like this. They were up 17-0 at halftime. They only ended up scoring one more time, but that's all they needed to do. Mostly because Matt Ryan looked awful. Matt Ryan threw 195 yards and 3 interceptions. But don't get me wrong, Matt Ryan, it's not really his fault. His offensive line crumbled like a gingerbread house. They looked awful. I think the only guy that really held up even kinda was Quentin Nelson. But even Jonathan Taylor couldn't get any lanes in the rushing attack. Just 9 carries for 54 yards. He was not good. Receiving, Michael Pittman Jr. actually didn't play, so their leading receiver was Ashton Doolin, which actually could also be a factor why Matt Ryan threw 3 interceptions. But Ashton Doolin did catch 5 receptions for 79 yards. So, okay, but then it goes way down, and it's actually Nyheim Hines, who's the backup running back. 4 catches for 37 yards. And on defense, they just really could not stop Jacksonville. Jacksonville's offensive line gave up 0 sacks and 0 interceptions. So it's very clear that Trevor Lawrence can be the guy if he has protection, because that's exactly what he was out there Sunday. And for Trevor Lawrence, 235 yards and 2 touchdowns. The stats, they look relatively average, but, I mean, he looks good. If you watch the game, he was getting the ball in the right places. There was actually a few drops from the receivers. I think ETN dropped one. Marvin Jones dropped one that would have gotten a first down. James Robinson looked like the guy out there. 23 carries, 64 yards, and a touchdown. Just 2.8 yards rushing average, but a lot of his rushes were like power back downs where he needed just a yard or 2 or he needed to get into the end zone. And Christian Kirk looked really, really good out there. 6 catches, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's a huge reason as to why they got the win out there. Evan Ingram looked also very good. He actually led them in receptions, 7 catches, 46 yards. So if you need a tight end on your waiver wire in fantasy, he could be the guy. Marvin Jones, 3 catches for 33 yards. ETN, the same thing, 3 catches for 33 yards. Zay Jones, I don't know why it says I Jones. I'm looking at the stats right now. It says I Jones, I guess because his name is Isaiah. But Zay Jones, 3 catches, 23 yards. James Robinson, 2 catches, 14. But other than that, nothing really special. There's only one other catch on the team. It's from Dan Arnold. But for the interception side of the ball, there was 3. They forced 3 turnovers. Andre Sisco picked off a pass. Devin Lloyd looked really, really good out there. He could have had a second one, but the ball was a little bit over his head, and he could only get one hand on it. And then Rayshawn Jenkins. But on sacks, Roy Robertson Harris had a sack. Josh Allen sacked Matt Ryan twice. Adam Gotsis had a sack. Arden Key had a sack. They looked very, very good. And if the defense looked anything like this, they will always have a chance, no matter how good the other team's defense is. Tyson Campbell actually looked like he got hurt at one point in the game, but he came back, actually didn't miss anything. So that's a good sign. I don't think he's in the injury report right now, but go Jaguars on to next week when they face the Chargers, who might be without Justin Herbert. We'll see. I think that's really just going to depend on if Herbert plays or not. If Herbert plays, they stand no chance. But if Herbert is out, I think Jags could very well win it. All right, and this is the game I was talking about just a little while ago. Dolphins versus Ravens. Dolphins come out on top 42-38. And the Ravens looked in command basically all game until a fourth quarter surge, and Tua decided he wanted to throw 6 freaking touchdown passes. Yeah, Tua Tagovailoa threw 469 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The 2 interceptions came in the first half. They were kind of sloppy, but he really put it together in the second half. Raheem Mostert looks like he's going to take over the backfield in Miami with 11 carries, 51 yards. He ended up coming from San Francisco with Mike McDaniel. Chase Edmonds only got 5 carries for 33 yards that game. He ended up rushing for actually 2 more yards a carry than Mostert, but, I mean, given the fact he got 6 more carries, he's not going to get nearly as many yards, or average as nearly as many yards. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both had 11 catches. Tyreek had 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. Waddle had 171 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both of those guys looked like cornerstones in this offense. Jasecki looked pretty solid, 4 catches, 41 yards, and a touchdown. And then it goes to Mostert, who had 3 catches, 28 yards. And then River Craycraft caught 1 catch for 2 yards and a touchdown. They looked really good. I'd say the one guy that I think probably should get more playing time on the offense is Cedric Wilson. But, other than that, I can't complain. They looked very, very, very good. And I think they took that personally. All the trash that the Ravens were talking, they took it personally. On defense, nobody could really get to Lamar Jackson. Obviously, it's hard to get to Lamar Jackson when he's over there running, literally running like a running back. And I actually kind of feel bad for Lamar Jackson because his amazing game is largely overshadowed by Tua's really great game. Lamar Jackson threw 318 yards and 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But also on the ground, he rushed 9 carries, 119 yards and a touchdown. So four touchdowns in all, over 100 yards on the ground and 300 passing. That's really good. Those aren't any normal quarterback's numbers, but people are just talking about how good Tua played, that they forget how great Lamar was. And then on the ground, they looked awful, as they usually do. They can't find a solid running back. Justice Hill had 3 carries for 16 yards. Kenyon Drake had 6 carries for 8 yards. Patrick Ricard had 1 carry for 5 yards. Mike Davis, 5 carries for 4 yards. He averaged 0.8 a carry. And then Mark Andrews actually ended up averaging the 3rd most out of the backfield. And actually, the 1st most was Lamar. So really, he's the 2nd leading carrier. But you know what? It's this whole thing. Rashad Bateman looked really good. He had just 4 catches, and I know that's nothing great. But 108 yards and 1 touchdown. He looks to be a huge, deep threat for Lamar right now. Mark Andrews looked like he could end up being the best tight end in the league. He actually did have the best tight end performance in week 2. 9 catches, 104 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then the next for them is actually Isaiah Likely, who's the backup tight end, behind Mark Andrews. 4 receptions, 43 yards. Devin Duvernay, 2 for 42. Demarcus Robinson just had 1 catch, but he did score 12 yards. And then it's Tylan Wallace, who had 1 catch, 9 yards. So nothing really special. And then Marcus Williams. He looked great. I think this is his first year as a Raven, coming from the Saints. Yes, it was, because he got replaced by Tyrann Mathieu. But yes, he looked really, really good with 2 interceptions, 10 tackles, 7 just on his own, 3 assist tackles. So he looked very good. The defense, other than Marcus Williams, looked kind of porous. There was definitely, they had their weak points. Looked like some Swiss cheese out there, the holes in it. There were things you could never attack, and then there were the ones that if you just repeatedly attack that area of the defense, they had no chance of stopping it. And it looked like the corners. Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters out there. They are top corners in this league, but they could not hold their defenders in check. But kudos to the Dolphins, though. Really. All right, I remember watching this part the intro of this game, and it said this is America's game. Screw that, man. This game was awful. Buccaneers ended up beating the Saints 20-10. Tom Brady played awful. Really, for Tom Brady, it was awful. 190 yards, 1 touchdown. It's bad. And he only completed 18 out of 34 passes. It's not like he completed a bunch of short passes for short gains. No, he was incompleting the passes. Leonard Fournette, not great. Actually, bad. 24 carries for just 65 yards. 65 yards is solid if you were getting 11 carries. He got 24. Mike Evans ended up being the leading receiver for the Bucs, and he got ejected mid-game. So that says a lot. 3 catches, 61 yards. And that really seemed to be the storyline this week, that Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans ended up getting into a fist fight on the field, as well as did Leonard Fournette, but I don't think he got ejected, as he got 24 carries. I think that says a lot. He still ended up with 24 carries. If he stayed in the game, and before that he had 24 carries, imagine the amount of carries he would have had before that, or after that. I digress, though. But most of the receivers ended up on the injury report, so Mike Evans playing was a miracle anyway. Chris Godwin obviously didn't play. Julio Jones did not play. So Brashad Perriman, Scotty Miller, and Russell Gage ended up being the main targets. Russell Gage ended up leading the team in catches with 5, but just 28 yards. And then it was Miller and Perriman with 3, with Perriman 45 yards and a touchdown, and then Miller with 34 yards. So nothing really special out of these guys. But you know what? The Bucs defense bailed out Tom Brady again, as they always do. Antoine Winfield had a sack. Devin White had a sack. Shaq Barrett had 2 sacks. Levante David had a sack. And Joe Tryon and Vita Vea each had half a sack. And then, for interceptions, Jamel Dean had 2 interceptions, and then Mike Edwards had 1 interception. So, what can't this Bucs defense do, right? And then for the Saints, Jameis Winston looked more like Jameis Winston. Last week, he was really good. This week, he was really bad. I think, by the way, I'm just going to say this. I think Jameis Winston is the most mid quarterback ever because he was the first to throw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. But it's not important to what's going on right now. But Winston, 236 yards, 1 touchdown, but 3 interceptions. Not good. Mark Ingram, because Alvin Kamara did not play, actually. Mark Ingram ended up with 10 rushes, 58 yards. I'm surprised Taysom Hill actually didn't end up getting more rushes. Because he only had 3 rushes for 14 yards, but the week before, he ended up with like 81 rushing yards. Man, it was crazy. The leading receiver for the Saints was actually Chris Olave, the rookie in the slot. 5 receptions for 80 yards. And then is Mike Thomas with 6 catches, 65 yards, and a touchdown. Jarvis Landry, the guy who was really good in week 1, over 100 receiving yards, was not this week. 4 catches, 25 yards. But I can't really blame on the receivers for having bad receiving games if their quarterback isn't getting them the ball. And then the defense reminds me a lot of the Ravens. Looked porous other than in the rushing, or like rushing the quarterback. They only had 1 sack, but they did pressure Tom a lot. That's very clear. But they still drove down enough to, win the game. So, I mean, you know what? The Bucs win 20-10. All right, now I got the Washington Commanders against the Detroit Lions. And I just want to say the Lions looked amazing, okay? Amazing. I will say there are a lot of teams that were very bad last year that are looking a lot better this year. And there are 2 that actually come to my mind, Jacksonville and Detroit, who actually had the 1st and 2nd overall picks, who spent them on defensive players that have both had very, very good first 2 games. So, Jared Goff looks very good. 256 yards, 4 touchdown passes. Amon-Ra St. Brown on the rushing game had 2 carries for 68 yards. Was their leading rusher with 2 carries. DeAndre Swift behind him with 5 rushes for 56 yards. And through the air, Amon-Ra St. Brown, not only being their leading rusher, but their leading receiver, who would have guessed it? He plays receiver. But 9 catches, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. Man looked unstoppable. Nobody could guard him. The defense looked like roasted chicken. Josh Reynolds had 3 catches for 38 yards and a touchdown. DeAndre Swift had 2 catches for 31 yards and a touchdown. TJ Hawkinson was largely a non-factor with 3 catches, 26 yards. Known as one of the better tight ends in the league. But you know what? I'll let it slide if you get your best receiver 9 receptions. DJ Chark. Why you have to screw me over, man? You look good, man. Come on. 1 catch is all I need. 1 catch. Come on. I got to bench you this week, bro. But on defense, William Harris had an interception. But other than that, Aiden Hutchinson. 3 sacks. That's really good. So kudos to you. I don't know if that's his first NFL sack or not. I don't know if he had a sack in week 1. But 3 sacks is very, very impressive. Although the Washington offensive line is not good. So take everything that the Lions defense did with a grain of salt. And there was Carson Wentz throwing them the ball. But moving on to the Washington side of the ball. Carson Wentz looked like Carson Wentz. He didn't throw 2 interceptions this week. He threw 1. But he also threw for 337 yards, 3 touchdowns. Antonio Gibson is going to lose his job I forgot his name. The running back who got into a tragic accident. I forgot his name. But Brian Robinson. He's going to lose his job to Brian Robinson very, very soon when he comes back. Hopefully by week 8. I feel very bad for the incident he was in. If you're interested in that, you can look it up. But I don't feel like talking about that because I have a feeling I'd end up being demonetized. Well, not demonetized, but age restricted or something like that if I talk about that. I don't make any money anyway, so... But just 2 yards a carry for Antonio Gibson. 28 yards on 14 carries. He did get the end zone, though. Just a little flair for fantasy managers. But nothing special. Curtis Samuel actually led them in receptions, receiving yards, and was very, very good. Got into the end zone as well. 7 receptions, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Terry McLaurin was solid. 4 catches, 75 yards. 0 touchdowns, though. Jahan Dotson, once again, looking like a rookie stud. 4 catches, 59 yards, 1 touchdown. He has more yards and more receptions. Did get in the end zone 1 less time, but good for him, though. Having a very, very good first 2 weeks. And then Logan Thomas, 3 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown. J.D. McKissick out of the backfield ended up being more of a factor than Antonio Gibson. And Antonio Gibson is known as a receiving back, so this does surprise me a little bit. But, what can you do, huh? Jamin Davis had a sack. Daron Payne had a sack. Smith Williams had one. No interceptions, though. Obviously, you could tell by me saying Jared Goff did not get a pass picked off. But good for the Lions. They look like... I hope they can turn things around after their 0-16 season back in the late 2000s. I forgot when it was. The year before they got Stafford. They got Stafford in 2009. So was it 2008? 2007 or 2008 when they had their 0-16 season. So... But, good for them. All right, now I got 49ers Seahawks, and Seahawks lost. 49ers won 27-7. And even in victory, I feel like it's a loss for the Niners because they did lose second-year quarterback Trey Lance to injury. And I bet every 49er fan or Jimmy Garoppolo lover or even Garoppolo, or people that thought Garoppolo should have left, are probably happy he stayed now. Because he had to come in, and he got the dub, though. So, he proved he still has some in the tank. It seemed like they were pondering getting rid of him at one point. But after just 3 passing attempts, Lance went down. He's going to have ankle surgery, I believe that's what it is. That will end his year. So, Garoppolo's going to have to come in. They have another injury-prone quarterback coming in to replace him. So we'll see how this goes. But Garoppolo came in, played the game manager role very well, 154 yards, 1 touchdown. Jeff Wilson proved his worth running the ball, 18 carries, 84 yards. Deebo Samuel still rushing the ball like he did last year, even though that's exactly what he said he didn't want to do. 4 carries, 53 yards. Tyrion Davis-Price got 14 carries, 33 yards. Ayuk was the leading receiver. Ayuk had 5 catches, 63 yards, and then Samuel right behind him, 5 catches for 44 yards. I just want to say Deebo Samuel has been very, very underwhelming through the air this year. He hasn't really done very much through the air. Ross Dwelly had 1 catch for 38 yards and a touchdown, so... that's pretty much it for them. Charvarius Ward, I forgot he was actually off of the Chiefs now, but he had a pick for the Niners, as well as did Tayshaun Gibson, who I am aware is a former Jaguar, I think. I may be wrong. Don't quote me on it. Geno Smith didn't play like week 1 Geno Smith, that's for sure. 197 yards, 1 interception. Still played the game manager role quite well. Literally just missed on 6 passes. One of those just so happened to be picked off. And I'm looking at the stat sheet. I actually didn't watch this game. I did watch the highlights, but I don't remember this being in there. DJ Dallas, who plays running back, threw an interception. I'm very confused. But, alright, moving on. Rashad Penny played like garbage, 6 carries, 15 yards, although he did just get 6 carries. So, I don't really know what's going on there if they saw something. Kenneth Walker got just 4 carries, 10 yards. So their running game was less than great. But Tyler Lockett was really good, like unexpectedly good. 9 catches, 107 yards. DK Metcalf, 4 catches, 35 yards, not good. His first 2 games have been underwhelming for sure. And then nothing else really special happened throughout this game. So Niners take it 27-7. Seahawks looked like everyone thought they were going to look like in week 1. All right, now I got Rams Falcons. The Falcons actually looked like they could make a comeback in this game. They still ended up losing 31-27. But guess what they were down by at halftime? 28-3. Everyone thought they were going to break the curse, but they just couldn't do it. But, for the Falcons, Marcus Mariota is going to end up bench for is it Desmond Ridder, I think, who's behind him. I think it's Desmond Ridder. It is, yes. Mariota ended up throwing 2 interceptions to 2 touchdowns. Not great. Just 196 yards, under 200 yards. Cordero Patterson looked like nothing great. At least on the ground. I don't know what he looks like through the air yet. Okay, not great through the air either. He had 0 catches. But it does look like he got a target. But 10 carries for him for 41 yards. Algier actually got just as many carries as him and 30 yards. And then Drake London looked very, very good through the air. 8 catches, 86 yards, 1 touchdown. Kaderil Hodge got 2 catches, 57 yards. Olamide Zaccheaus, 2 catches, 21 yards, 1 touchdown. And what is going on with Kyle Pitts? He had 2 catches, which matches Hodge and Zaccheaus, who, you probably didn't know who those guys are. But I imagine you know who Kyle Pitts is. And he had 19 yards. He's not getting targeted. It's not his fault. It's not like he's dropping passes or anything. But he's just not getting the targets. Mariota has to look his way. Either that or the coach just has to write up some plays for him. Because he's one of the most talented guys who plays tight end in the league. He's built like a receiver who has all the qualities of a tight end. They have to get him the ball. But from the way the Falcons were playing, they deserved to lose. But the one guy I didn't want to get an interception did, Jalen Ramsey. I really don't like Jalen Ramsey. His character is just something special, But A.J. Terrell was getting burnt out there. I don't know what was going on. He's known as a really good corner, but they did attack him. Matthew Stafford has to get himself in order. He did not look good. 2 interceptions, just unforced errors. 3 touchdowns though, 272 yards. He has to cut down on the turnovers if they want any chance. If you almost lose to the Falcons, that says a lot. Darrell Henderson was okay, 10 carries, 47 yards, 1 touchdown. Other than that, Cam Akers had to step up in a big way. 15 carries, 44 yards. Brandon Powell had 1 carry for negative 26 yards. Yeah, okay. Cooper Kupp had 11 catches for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. Good game for Cooper. Tyler Higbee had 7 catches for 71 yards. Allen Robinson is starting to get involved. 4 catches, 53 yards, 1 touchdown. Ben Skoranek had 2 catches for 16 yards. Other than that, nothing really special. Other than that, I just want to make it known. You know what? Kobe Durant, probably the best name. And he just so happens to play in the NFL, and he has 2 names of an NBA player. Got an interception this week. Good for that guy. But other than that, nothing special has happened. 31-27 victory, Rams. All right, now a game that really showed how bad, what's his name? Josh McDaniels is at coaching. The decisions he made were just special. Listen, I like Josh McDaniels. He's a former Patriots offensive coordinator. But he's got to change up the playbook a little bit. You got to get... He's getting Devontae Adams involved. But not really. He was great week 1, but Devontae Adams had 2 catches in week 2. 2 catches for 12 yards. He did get in the end zone, though, but that means nothing with 2 catches for a player of his caliber. Freaking Mac Hollins was the leader in receiving yards for the Raiders. Although the ending of that game was not Josh McDaniels' fault. That was all on Hunter Renfrow in overtime. He fumbled twice in a row, ended up getting scooped up and by what's his name? Man, I should have wrote this down. I probably should have done this before. Byron Murphy, scooped up by Byron Murphy, and was taken back for a touchdown. Not much that McDaniels could have done to change that there. Derek Carr actually played a very clean game, 252 yards, 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs was good, 19 carries, 69 yards. Yeah, other than that, just disappointing. Darren Waller is finally getting involved. He wasn't really involved week 1, but got involved, 6 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Other than that, nothing special for them. But the Cardinals, James Conner actually got hurt midway through the game, which I got not quite happy about because I had him starting in one of my leagues. But 7 carries, 25 yards for Conner. 8 carries, 59 yards, and a touchdown for Darrell Williams, the former Kansas City Chief. Seems former Kansas City Chiefs are having had a good week. Week 2. Benjamin actually had a good game, 8 carries, 31 yards. Zach Ertz, 8 receptions, 75 yards. Marquise Brown, 6 receptions, 68 yards. Greg Dortch, 4 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. And if I'm going through this fast, I'm at the 41-minute mark, so I really have to get these done. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but final score, 29-23, Cardinals over Raiders. Listen, I don't have much to say about this game, but the freaking Broncos better get it together. They did beat the Texans, but it's 16-9 against the Texans, who tied the week before with the Colts, who just lost to the Jaguars 24-0. So, yeah. Davis Mills for the Texans, bad, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 177 yards. Damian Pierce is finally getting it together, 15 carries, 69 yards. Nico Collins is the leading receiver for them, for 4 catches, 58 yards. And then Brandon Cooks was okay, 4 catches, 54 yards. But, nothing special on that end. And for the Broncos, Russell Wilson, 219 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Not great. For a guy known as highly as Russell Wilson, that's a bad game. Javonte Williams, 15 carries, 75 yards. Not Josh Gordon. Melvin Gordon, 10 carries, 47 yards. And then Cortland Sutton was really good. 7 catches, 122 yards. That's most of Russell Wilson's passing yards. But Jerry Jeudy got hurt mid-game. He ended up leaving. But most of the Broncos team ended up getting hurt. I know Pat Surtain got hurt. A few other guys I know ended up leaving the game. So their coaching and health is going to be the big thing for them because the coaching hasn't been good. Go and look at the highlights. The coaching was not good. But 16-9 final score. Now, the Cowboys actually beat the Bengals 20-17. Joe Burrow looked bad. 199 yards, 1 touchdown. He didn't really look bad if you watched the game, but the stats are bad. He got sacked so much. They put in so much money to protecting him this offseason, and they still suck. Like, La'el Collins did not guard well. Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, just all 3 of those guys, the new additions to the offensive line, were bad. He's on pace to get sacked over 100 times this season. They have to get that in order. Joe Mixon, 19 carries, 57 yards, nothing great. T. Higgins was actually the leading receiver, 6 receptions, 71 yards, 1 touchdown. Jamar Chase, 5 catches, 54 yards, underwhelming for Jamar. Other than that, nothing special. Tyler Boyd had just 2 catches for 17 yards as the 3rd receiver. Not great. But yeah, nothing special. I mean, as I said, 2017, Cowboys over Bengals. Cooper Rush looked very good. 235 yards, 1 touchdown, played the game manager. But with the rushing attack, their rushing attack was really good. Split up carries between Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. 21 carries with them together. Just under 100 yards with them together. And 1 touchdown. So they rushed very well. Noah Brown was actually the leading receiver. 5 receptions, 91 yards, 1 touchdown. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb, 7 catches, 75 yards. Tony Pollard, 4 for 55. Dalton Schultz, underwhelming, 2 for 18. But I think he's actually injured right now. or he's not expected to play this next week. So, yeah. All right, 2017 Cowboys over Bengals. All right, now I got Bears v. Packers. Bears lost to the Packers 27-10. Packers, after a bad Week 1 performance, which is exactly what they did last week, they rebounded and had an amazing game here, which is exactly what they did last year. Guess what? They made the playoffs last year, and then they were disappointing in the playoffs. So I imagine that's going to be the exact same thing that happens this year, except without the Devontae Adams, which makes things 100% harder. But for the Bears, Justin Fields showed he still has a lot of developing to do. 70 yards and 1 interception, but he only threw 11 times. They really relied on their rushing attack. But 15 rushing attempts for 122 yards for David Montgomery. Very good. Same thing for Khalil Herbert, who had 4 carries, 38 yards. They both, Montgomery actually averaged over 8 yards a carry. Khalil averaged 9.5. Justin Fields did rush for a touchdown, though, so his 1-to-1 touchdown ratio. Equanimous St. Brown was actually the leader in receiving yards for, guess what? 2 receptions, 39 yards. I'm not even going to mention the other receivers because they don't really need to be mentioned. But, yeah, Packers clobbered the Bears 27-10. And nothing went right for the Titans Monday night, losing to the Bills 41-7. For the Titans, Ryan Tannehill threw 117 yards, 2 interceptions, got benched for Malik Willis, who wasn't really much better. 1 completion out of 4 for 6 yards, ended up fumbling after he ran into his own guy. But Derrick Henry rushed for 25 yards and 1 touchdown. But he did just get 13 carries, though. He wasn't getting the ball, but Malik Willis did rush for 16 yards, if that means anything. And Hassan Haskins ended up being the leading rusher who came in after Henry and Ryan Tannehill got benched. He got 37 yards on 9 carries. Treylon Burks showed promise, 4 catches for 47 yards. Robert Woods, 4 catches for 39 yards. But nobody else did anything because they sucked. Bills, Josh Allen was amazing, 317 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air. Then he only rushed once for 10 yards. James Cook was actually their leading rusher, ended up coming in after Div and Singletary kind of took a back seat to James. Ended up rushing 11 times for 53 yards. Receiving, Stephon Diggs was remarkable, 12 catches, 148 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Other than that, no one else really did anything. I guess you could say Dawson Knox, 4 catches for 41 yards, and then Reggie Gillum got in the end zone, the fullback. But other than that, nothing remarkable. Jordan Poyer intercepted a pass. Matt Milano intercepted a pass. But, other than that, nothing special. But Bills really showed why they're the favorites to win the Super Bowl this year. All right, last game of the week, and the actual last game of the week. Eagles beat the Vikings 24-7. Kirk Cousins had one of those games where he was not good. 221 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Dalvin Cook only rushed for 17 yards. That could be a very big factor as to why he wasn't good. 6 carries for 17 yards. Jalen Reagor had just as many running yards as him, and he's a wide receiver. That's like the 4th on the depth chart. He had 17 yards as well. Adam Thielen was the leading receiver, 4 catches, 52 yards. Justin Jefferson had just 6 receptions on 48 yards. Yeah, that's not great. Ish Smith Jr. Irv Smith Jr. I was thinking of basketball for some reason. But 5 catches, 36 yards, 1 touchdown. Nothing special for either of these teams. Actually, nothing special for either of these teams, mostly because Jalen Hurts was okay. Through the air, he was remarkable at the running attack. 333 yards throwing, which was very good. 1 touchdown to 1 interception ratio. Miles Sanders proved he could still be a starting caliber running back, 17 carries, 80 yards. Jalen Hurts, 11 carries, 57 yards, 2 touchdowns. Devonta Smith had a bounce-back game with 7 catches, 80 yards. A.J. Brown, less great than he was last week. But that's also because Devontae actually had a catch this week. 5 catches for 69 yards for A.J. And then Quez Watkins had 2 for 69 and a touchdown. So, pretty good. And then Dallas Goedert, their tight end, had 5 for 82. So, yeah, very good game. Yeah, with that, that's the last game of the week, and then I'm going to go ahead and hop into my unexpectedly good player of the week and my unexpectedly bad player of the week. My unexpectedly good player of the week this week is going to be Christian Kirk of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is a huge reason they tasted victory this week with 6 catches, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's very quickly becoming Trevor Lawrence's favorite target. And to be honest, I wasn't a fan of his huge $72, $73, $74 million contract, something in the $70 millions. I wasn't a fan of it, but he's so far living up to that. I'll give him that. And then for my unexpectedly bad player, I actually have 2 players here. One for a very bad performance, and the other for being the reason his team lost. And I already talked about both of these players, and we'll see if you can guess all of them. I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. You probably didn't. But, you know what? My bad performance player is Kyle Pitts, which one you probably did guess. He had just 2 catches this week for 19 yards, which I've already stated. It's really not his fault, though, as he isn't being targeted, which I also already said. I'm just basically reinstating things I've already said. But it's true, though. Get this man the ball. He's one of the most talented players I've seen in a very long time. This next guy who costed his team the game is Hunter Renfrow, whom you probably also already guessed. I was just messing with you when I said. You probably didn't guess him, because you probably did, because I was very not happy with both of these guys. Fumbled once. Luckily, the Raiders lineman hopped onto it, and then he fumbled again, and the Cardinals picked it up and scored in overtime, which cost his team the game, quite literally. So I feel like I've already said enough. All right, now that's all I've got for you guys this week. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'll be back next week, as always, with a recap of NFL Week 3. Maybe it won't be as long as almost an hour this next week. But with that said, I'm your host, Chris Higgins, and this has been Fanatic Breakdown.
Hey, hey, hey.